have a very loud mouth, but is it coming out of here too?
Yeah.
I have an extremely loud mouth. Okay. Hello, it's our pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Dr. Teresa McKenna. I'm the Director of Psychology Services at St. Charles Hospital. What else do I have up there? I'm also the Director of the Diabetes Care Center over there. So there's initials after my name that don't have anything to do with what's going on here tonight. But I have a couple of jobs over there. And I'm so happy to see you tonight. Here, I'm going to introduce my co-speaker.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing? My name is Joe Catalano. I know it says Joseph, but I go by Joe, so you call me Joe. Right now, I am currently the program director over at St. Charles Hospital for 2 units. I oversee the counseling services on our medical withdrawal unit for detox, for alcohol and substance use. And I also am the program director of the chemical dependency 28-day rehab program for individuals with alcohol and substance use disorder. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight and be with you guys. We look to educate, learn, and listen from you guys, and also educate you guys as well. So thank you for being here, and we'll get started.
Oh, I have to stand here. Oh,
Yeah, we can switch. You let me know when
we
you
have no
want.
clicker.
Yeah.
I'm used to walking
I'm the
around.
clicker for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have such a special mission. Can I just hear a little bit about where you're working? I know some people work in outreach, but what about outreach people? Okay, and where else are people working?
Pantry?
Pantry?
Yes. Soup kitchen.
Soup kitchen?
So I manage our thrift shop and some of my thrift shop volunteers.
Thrift shop, excellent.
Okay. And you said back in
Religious education.
religious education.
Religious ed, okay. So many great ministries going on and so much opportunity to be seeing people coming in and out of your doors, okay? So today we wanted to give a special thank you for all that you're doing, but also we know that it provides, you never know what's coming in the door. You never, when you're working with people like pretty much all of us do, you never know exactly who you're going to get. We have different personality types. We have people that have more significant issues, and we're here to talk tonight about dealing with some of the challenging conversations or challenging interactions that might be coming along as you're doing your thing. I'm just wondering, you have this on, should I stay in like one area?
No, you're fine.
Okay, because I like to bounce around, and meanwhile, if she's trying to say, it's going to be bad. Okay. All right. So we're called to help our neighbors, as we all know, especially during the season of Lent. But some clients may present special challenges, okay? We have people that have mental illness, that are presenting with mental illness. People with substance use disorders, sometimes both at the same time, by the way. That's not unusual to say. Certain medical conditions, we might have people that have traumatic brain injuries or have some kind of dementia, and perhaps they're not presenting or speaking as easily as they could, or perhaps they're even having some difficulty regulating their mood or their actions. People with developmental delays, and people with personality disorders, okay? This is like the family. Only kidding family. Maybe it's just my family. The vast majority of these people, okay, are going to present in calm, fine ways. There's not going to be an issue. It's a real fallacy that people with mental illness or people with substance use disorder cause ruckus, havoc, and disaster where they go. That's not true at all. But these are the possibilities where we might have some more challenging interactions with some of these people that come in, okay? So the potential could be a bit higher. I'm going to hand off to Joe next.
Wow, this isn't all my clip though, what? So before I get started about talking about challenging behaviors, what are some of the challenging behaviors you guys may, or to educate us on what, anyone want to show hands? Anyone want to, for instance, something that may be challenging when you guys are doing outreach? Yes.
The language. Like, a lot of people only speak Spanish.
The language barrier, which I think I have that in a later slide, but that can certainly make. And what do you do in that situation? What are your options there?
Well, usually someone knows something, you try to.
You're kind of piecing something together. Do you have the ability to access like a language line or something like that? Language line is something we use at the hospital, for example, that can either be on a phone or an iPad, and it's translating as you speak. If you find that the population is increasing that way, that might be something to look into as a parish situation, because it will just make the interactions easier for everybody involved. Okay? But that can be a challenge. It's a challenge for us in the hospital as well. And we have those tools to help us, but it could still be challenging.
Yes, language barrier, definitely, and like, as Dr. McKenna said, there are interpretive services that, I don't know if it could be a possibility in some of the outreaches and places that you're working at and volunteering at, but it's a good tool to help, because yes, language barriers definitely is a challenge. Anyone else have any other challenges before I talk about some that they can think of? Yes.
People being argumentative or too assertive, too aggressive with you.
Absolutely, yes, and that's, as Dr. McKenna said, we definitely get it and correct, and how to kind of de-escalate that, right? And that's why we're here. We're here to kind of talk about these obstacles and challenges that you guys are going to face, to where we can de-escalate a situation like that. So, anybody else? Yes.
So over on that side, we get a lot of theft,
Oh, okay.
and those people can become quite aggressive, and so I don't allow my volunteers to really confront those people.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates a situation where the people chronically doing it understand they can get away with it because they're in a situation where it's kind of safe to do it unless I step in and intervene.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
That is a tough one.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, because you're right, you don't want to put anybody in danger.
Right, I will put my volunteers at risk,
Yep.
so I have to assess the situation and determine, is this worth it for me to put myself at risk to protect, and that sort of thing.
And that's an incredible tool that you already assess, right? You assess the situation, and that goes for everybody, right? You assess the situation, and as in one of the later slides show, knowing when it's out of maybe our scope or something we can't handle, and recognizing that. So the key word is, like you just said, assess. In any situation that you guys come about, you assess the situation.
And there is a difference between somebody, for example, taking something, if you think of a child grabbing something and starting to walk out, we would stop them, tell them to put it back, it's different. And a criminal who's coming in to purposely take things, that's not a psychological problem, that's a legal problem. But it puts you in the same kind of a situation where, what do we do next? You're not really going to reason so much with a criminal, okay? Because
Well,
they're there to
people
get whatever
that do
they
it
want.
Or also have other factors that,
And often there are, there's, we call multi-factors. There's a lot of factors going on at the same time, absolutely.
Well, some people, they're needed, something that they have to have, something, and then there's people that just do it for, to
The
some
thrill,
kind of game or whatever.
the game, whatever, see if they can get away with
Right.
something. Right. Yep.
Anybody else before we move on? Yeah.
I want to, along the lines that Denise is talking about in the food pantry, sometimes, we provide bags for them and whatnot, and then they're allowed to walk around, and sometimes you'll say, could you just take one, or, and you'll give the instruction, and then, they'll scoot off, and then you'll see them take 2 or 3, and so I try to diffuse it by saying, we have a lot of families, but, you'll come across that too, which is, oh my goodness, how do we handle this without, like Denise say, how do we not, escalate any kind of thing? But on the other hand, we do have a lot of families that we're feeding, and so that comes up with us.
There's almost a hoarding kind of a mentality that goes on, especially when something's limited. I don't know how open you were, or if you were creating packages during the peak of COVID, but let's think about just the toilet paper situation in the supermarkets. All of a sudden, people had 20 in their house and they had to get another 20. All right, so if you ever need, by the way, give me a call, because my father has enough for the next 3 years. That's all he has, because he supplies outreach constantly. He has 3 pantries in his house. Well, this goes to church every week. I'm like, boy, he can open it. He should just open it in front of his own house, because that's how much stuff he has. But think about that mentality. And this is people that, we're not criminals, but once you say something's in a limited supply, we run out. There's going to be a snowstorm. People are out getting milk. Do you really need that much milk? Probably not. But there's a fear that goes on. And people will respond to that sometimes. And they will start grabbing more than perhaps they need. And there are limited supplies of certain things. So it gets to be a hard situation for you, I'm sure.
It does. And the key words, like you said, assess, and you said another word that I heard, diffuse.
Right.
And that's the goal of this, right? De-escalation. To try to diffuse the situation, and so you guys are already thinking in the right mindset of why we're here. So, what can cause some challenging behaviors in individuals? Fear, like we just talked about. Fear of maybe someone came in to steal something because they don't have a meal, or fear is usually a big factor in some of the challenges that we face in our field, right, every day.
Definitely. And there is sometimes a feeling with people that they need it more than you do. I need this more than you do. I have
That's what I feel is part of our responsibility, to try and teach, inspire people to, like
to be less selfish.
Yeah, that
Yes.
there are other people too. They're just as needy, like to try.
Right.
And
And I don't know that people realize it sometimes, but it is, as we're speaking this out, this is so wonderful because that truly is a challenge. That people, that there are psychological terms and sociological terms for people that are, when they're in that situation, are like, I need it more, I have to get it, people act in strange ways when they're under a great deal of stress. And the fear might go with that fear of hunger, fear of not being able to supply certain things for their family or for themselves, even if they're living alone, for example, like you said. So, well, they have 10 rolls of toilet paper. She said 1, but is 2 really going to matter? They have 10. But they're not thinking about the next person and the next person that's coming. And unfortunately, that goes on a lot in society as well. We have a me, me, me kind of a society in a lot of ways. Not 100%, you're all perfect examples of not me, me, me. Giving of your own time and volunteering, working to try to help the community, those are all wonderful things. But there is a lot of considering yourself, which we're used to kind of seeing in little children, maybe teenagers, but usually with adults, we would like to see them be more open, but that you can definitely lose that. And a lot of times that goes with the fear and the anxiety, or a personality issue where it's like, I need it more than you, I'm more important than you, even if they're not saying that.
Yes, and as Dr. McKenna said, the next couple have to do with more of maybe an individual that you may come across that does have, some mental illness that's causing the challenge, right? For us, it's a little easier to recognize maybe for you guys, but there are some tips and things you can pick up on when somebody's maybe in an altered mental status, or whether their anxiety is high, or they have, there's a whole list of mental illnesses that you may encounter with somebody. Personality disorders, right? I know you know a little bit more of that than I do, so maybe if you want to briefly describe what like a personality disorder might do to somebody.
Well, a narcissistic, you've heard of the term a narcissist, right? Meaning it's all about a narcissistic person will say, I need it more than you, kind of, even if it's just in their head. But that could be part of a personality disorder. Some people can have antisocial personality disorder. So our favorite one in psychology is called personality disorder not otherwise identified or not otherwise described. We love that one because we don't exactly know what's wrong, but something's wrong. Something is wrong. And that happens sometimes. It might take us a while to peg down exactly what it is. Okay? And then there are some that are annoying and some that are actually, they can be, again, more dangerous to the individual who suffers from it, something like we call borderline personality disorder. These people have very unstable personal relationships. They often present for treatment, not because of their personality disorder, but because of some mood disorder on top of it. They're depressed or they're anxious. And while they're in treatment or therapy, we see that there's also this personality disorder, this kind of history of instability. Those people are much more likely, for example, to try to hurt themselves or to try to kill themselves. And that's a different type of, so there's many, many different types of personality disorders. We throw around the term personality, whose personality. Personalities don't tend to change, okay? Mood disorders can change. If you're feeling depressed, you can feel better. If you're feeling anxious, you can feel better. Personalities don't tend to change. But sometimes people can become more aware of what they're doing depending on their type and there are certain therapies that are working with some personality disorders that show some promise. So it's tough though. You're not going to change them in one interaction, I think. And I think that sometimes knowing our own limits is important because even as professionals, we're not able to change the personalities of certain people, okay? We're not going to change their personalities. We might make them more aware, but sometimes people don't want to be aware. They don't care what you have to say because they know it all already. Do you know any of those people? Any experts? You know some of them. I'm sure you do. Okay? I'm related to several. They're delightful people, but they know everything. And going back and forth, you have to decide how much energy you're going to expend on this. Okay? Because sometimes it's not going to change. And sometimes you need to step back a little bit and say, okay, I'm not going to change this. Let me deal with the situation safely. And let me deal with the situation as pleasantly as possible. And that's a real skill to make somebody feel like they got what they needed, they had a desirable interaction, and you're not standing there when they leave pulling your hair out of you. Okay? We want to watch out for you because you're so important to the community and what you do. We're trying to take care of you.
The next one is the effect of mood-altering substances, alcohol, and substance abuse. That is what I do every day. So have you guys encountered that in your interactions and outreach?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a big one. That obviously is definitely going to, because it's mood altering, right? Like we said, that is definitely going to alter somebody's status. Like you said about theft, someone may steal something because they either need a meal or they need to go sell something to get their substance. So, like I said, with that, always remember when the person they're usually intoxicated if you're dealing with them when you've dealt with that
Yes.
situation. Just real briefly, how do you guys usually handle that when you get somebody highly intoxicated?
So we have several that I know of that I can tell when they're walking down the street. If I see them first, I will approach them before they actually enter the store.
Okay, good.
And kind of say, we're not really able to take care of you today, and I'll let them move on.
Mm-hmm.
If I see one come in, I will make sure that I am in the building with my volunteer, because we have 2 buildings. I'll make sure I'm in the building with that person, just to make sure that whatever they're taking care of, I'm in the background just to make sure nothing escalates.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, we had a situation, a mother came in with a young child, preschooler, and I was wearing a mask and I could smell marijuana reeking from her. And I'm concerned she's getting behind the wheel of the car again with this child.
Yes.
And her reflexes in her driving is going to be impaired.
Yeah,
And I
that's a-
can't be around that smell too long because then I start to feel very nauseous and I get very lightheaded and I don't want to be here.
Sure, and yes, that's a big concern. That's a tough, because I know in our world, we call mandated reporting, right? And so, if any of you ever feel, I think anybody could be a mandated reporter, really. And if you feel like somebody is at risk, and even for, like you said, if somebody is highly intoxicated to a level of like you feel that not only a danger to the people here, but also maybe a danger to themselves out there, you could always call 911, and that's later on in the slides, as we talk about it. You have always err on the side of caution, and if you feel that there's an imminent risk to somebody in any which way, whether it's mental health, we talk about suicide, right? Substance abuse, or you said if you feel that there's some sort of neglect, right? You can always, look, what's the worst thing that could happen, right?
I think, Joe, the other thing that comes up, and this is just a complication, is that marijuana is legalized in the state right now. And if you've ever been around a smoker, just a regular tobacco smoker, you know that smell can stay on the clothes for a long, long time, or the furnishings. So you're looking for certain kinds of, they might smell like marijuana, you don't know that they're necessarily stoned. And even if we tested them then, they might still come up positive, but they might have smoked a month ago, which is what makes marijuana so difficult. It's not like you can do a breathalyzer like alcohol, and we can see what your status is. You're still coming up positive a month later, you might not have touched anything. So we would look for other kind of activities, or what is their behavior like? Things like that, where we would determine whether or not we were going to get other people involved to try to keep that child safe, getting back to what you were saying before. Because it becomes a very slippery slope. And one of the issues that we have, pretty much anybody that works with substance use disorders had a problem with marijuana being generally legalized, because it gets complicated in things like this. It gets very complicated. If you were drinking in the car, if you were drinking vodka in the car, you get pulled over and you get a DV. But you've probably smelled it as you're driving. Have you smelled it as you're driving, or is it just me? It's coming from some car in front of you, behind you, or beside you. You sniff it around, you're like, where is that coming from? but it's strong, and you know that something's going on in the car, but unless they're acting in a way that's looking odd or driving erratically, they're probably not getting pulled over, unless they're pulled over for something else. So it does become a little, it definitely becomes a little hairy as we're dealing with that, because now we're dealing with a substance that's legal like alcohol, but can be misused like alcohol. And just like you would be wary of somebody fully intoxicated getting in a car with a child, or anybody for that matter, we would be the same way with somebody stoned. What might they look like, Joe?
With marijuana?
Yeah.
Glassy eyes, marijuana, like you said, most of the time, well, now they have it where you can vape it, so it's not as potent.
Yeah, or it doesn't smell like that.
Yeah, that's, but
It smells totally different.
somebody actually smoking actual, marijuana out of a pipe or a joint, whatever, how they're smoking it, you will smell it, but really if you, like a level of impairment, right, you'll see real glassy eyes. Like that from Dr. McKenna said. Someone didn't present with those glassy eyes, and they might have smoked yesterday and it's on their clothes, or maybe it was in their car, because people that smoke, obviously, cigarette smokers and marijuana smokers, if they do it in their car regularly, that's just going to be the natural smell that comes out of their car. It could be on their clothes. But yes, with marijuana, glassy eyes, alcohol, obviously, you could most of the time smell it on somebody. With like opiates and benzodiazepines, people usually like a very droopy and nodding out kind of way, and that's where, like I said, with cases like that, when you guys have that here, never hesitate. That is where I would recommend to call if 911, because that person, it's not that that person's going to get arrested. That person may need to come to our detox. That person may need a safe place because maybe they're going to get hit by a car, or they're going to pass out in the woods. It happens. It happens a lot to people, unfortunately, with the disease of alcoholism and substance use. It happens quite too often, so anytime, and that's what it is. It's, yes, you want to protect yourselves, and you also want to protect that individual, especially if there's that level of impairment where, like you said, they can't even come in the building, like you said, Dee. So, that's, so yeah, like I said, those are
The marijuana person, how are they going to walk? Will their speech be slow, their reaction sluggish? How are they going to
I think it
walk
depends.
and
That's a good question, because like I said, there's plenty of people that can highly function on it, and then there's people that will, so it's a
The marijuana, there tends to be an alteration in how they're dealing with their environment. So there's a slowness, there's an inattentive kind of or they're attending to this light up here, very careful. I had a kid argue with me. I was doing a lecture in a high school. This was long ago. It has to be at least 25 years ago. And they said to me, this is wonderful to hear, especially as a mother, I think I drive better when I'm stoned because I'm so attentive. And I'm like, you're so attentive, but you're so attentive to like the fly that just flew into the car and not the people in front of you.
Yes.
You don't know what you're so attentive to. So it's like, people will try to convince you they're okay. But there's that tendency to be slow, the altered interaction with people, the slug. Now some people are just sluggish to begin with, by the way. And this is what makes your job hard, because you don't know, is this their baseline personality? Do they have something else that we talked about before? Perhaps a brain injury or some other kind of problem that's also adding to this. And we're thinking, I had a patient that had type 1 diabetes and was stumbling around Kmart when Kmart was still around. Was stumbling around Kmart, and they called the police right away. They were thinking they were drunk. And what was really happening is they had a severely low blood sugar. And when the police got there, they did look and they saw that they had the band on that said, they had a Med Alert band on. It said, I have diabetes. And it was turning into a medical emergency, but they absolutely looked like they were drunk. Okay? So I would call in a coworker, a co-helper, so you're not alone in the situation. Kind of assess what you want to do. You don't need to be, this might be alcohol, this might be drugs, this might be blood sugar, this might be a hit on the head, maybe they just had a concussion. I don't know what's going on with them, but you know something is not right, and therefore you want to perhaps offer them help. You look like you're having trouble standing up, but I see you with this child. Is there somebody that you can call to bring you home? I feel concerned about you driving, for example.
Excellent.
Okay?
Excellent, yeah.
Before, and if you're getting arguments and stuff, then you can escalate it up. But something as simple as that can be helpful because you're looking out for the people and then without having, you don't have to be the expert in knowing everything because we wouldn't know all those things I just talked about. We wouldn't know every single one of them unless we were sitting there assessing them, testing them. You're not going to know all of that, okay? So that could be a way to offer, and we're going to go into a little bit more how to speak to them in a second when we get through these couple slides here.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'll move forward because I know in the interest
Yep.
of time. So obviously, as Dr. McKenna said, it could be something medical, right? Like somebody's altered or could be something medical because we know if somebody's blood sugar gets low, you know, or, yes.
Quick question, I understand that they eat the pot, or,
They can have edibles.
Yes.
It's called edibles where they
What would the-
eat the marijuana.
now they would be the same effect. now.
Yes.
Same effect, yeah,
You
whether
still
it's...
get glassy eyes and
Yes,
everything?
yes, whether it's edible or it's, actually edibles
But you
are
wouldn't
actually more
smell it
potent.
then?
They're
And this
saying
is-
the
and
edibles
this
are
is
very
a big
potent.
concern because you probably know they look like candy or baked goods. And it's critically important that that stuff stays away from children. And also from adults that like to indulge. I mean, you know, if there's cake out, call me in. Brownies, great. Marijuana brownies, that's going to be a big problem. When I bake regular brownies, it's hard to stop at one. It's probably hard to stop at one just because they taste like I can say, this would be a big problem for me. I would be like unconscious like half the time. What, I don't know what the limit would be. It would be a bad thing. I would have to totally stay away from that stuff. Better not to get started, is what I always tell them. Better not to get started until the teenagers. They look at me. I'm like, I ask them the question first. I give them every opportunity to tell me the truth. I ask them without their parent in the room. Drinking, I use it. Never even on the weekends. Like I'm saying this to a 16-year-old sitting there going, oh God, hopefully not, hopefully not. And they're like, no, never on the weekends, never with your friends. No. I'm like, okay, keep it that way. So this conversation was like, that's good. It's hard to do that sometimes, but it's good. Because it's easy to start. The starting is fine. It's stopping that's the problem. And that becomes the issue. But I digress. Go on.
Oh, that's okay.
That's a whole nother talk. Never mind, that's another talk.
So yeah, like I said, a medical, you know, somebody's medical could obviously impact that as well, and you may see that. And also, obviously, difficulty understanding the kind of assistance and limits and assistance being offered. So sometimes, right, the person may be, I guess, looking for more than what we can offer, right, I guess, and seeking out things that, you know, maybe starting in one thing and then they're digressing into other things. So recognizing that too, when the person's...
I know when my parents and my husband were with St. Vincent de Paul, there was there's an interview. It's not just, hey, here's your money. Hey, here's food for the next few months. There's also a process of trying to find out what the needs are, what the limits are, and things like that. And I don't think some people realize that. I think, do you ever have the feeling they might come into outreach or the pantry and say, well, aren't you just giving it to me? You know, where we do have to have some kind of boundaries so we can serve as many people as possible. So that can be a difficult thing too. And that's where people might get upset if they mean, what do you mean I have to show you? I know my husband used to have to look at, if they needed a bill paid or something, they'd take care of the first one. After the second one, it's like, well, let's see what they had to meet with the financial kind of person to look over what the income was like and what was coming in, and before they kept going. And I think people were getting upset about that sometimes. But again, this is to be able to serve as many people as possible.
So there's a couple of slides we're going to go into are some good verbal, and Dr. McKenna put up some really good nonverbal ways that we can communicate with individuals when they come in. And I know we put together some of these, and they're effective for me in my role, in everyday roles with our children, people we work with. Communication, right? Levels of communication is everything, right? The way we present ourselves, the way we speak to one another, our body language, that's a big one, right? If I'm sitting here up here talking to you guys like this, am I looking interested in doing this tonight? Absolutely not. So, and I'm very interested in doing this. So you have to project that. So, you know, and people feed off that. You know, I definitely know patients that I work, you know, with on a daily basis, like whether it's the eye contact or how you greet them, you know, it's basically just, this is how I tell my staff about when people come in and it's their first time or they're sitting there with us and we're interviewing them or we're doing an intake or an assessment. I said, think about the person you love the most, right? Think about the people you love the most, and they were sitting in that chair, how would you want them to be treated, right? And that's it. And that kind of resonates right there. I don't have to say much more because it's like you get in your head like, oh, okay. So it's just treating people with love, dignity, respect, empathy, as Dr. McKenna put in the next slide. And I'll, if you want to talk about that when we get into that. But so these are some of the things like I always do where when I'm meeting somebody with a warm greeting, introduce yourself, especially for you guys. Like all you guys talked about, worked in religious education, right? Food pantry, everyone here's got different roles. So when somebody is presenting to you in the building or wherever you're working with these individuals, sometimes they don't know who you are, right? So always your name is good, first name is good, right? I'm Joe. I'm an outreach worker here at St. Gerard Magella. It's a pleasure to meet you. How can I help you today? Right? So sometimes even just that pleasantry and that little warm greeting you give may just even make that person, because again, like we went over in that first slide, anxiety. Some people may come in with that anxiety, and the way you greeted them, not saying it's going to take their anxiety from a 10 to a 0, but you might have just scaled it down a bit just by the way you interacted with them.
Were you seeing a lot more people that maybe that were working but still needed some more help, trouble paying bills, people that never thought they would be in asking for help? Did you see any of those kinds of people when you were over the past year or two? That's been happening. I know it's happening more at the outreach down at my parish, that people are coming in and they're like, I'm having trouble pulling it together. Working.
Yeah, we had someone at our church come last year. She belonged to a different parish. We usually we do it by area,
Right.
but she said, I'm embarrassed because I'm so active in my church. I don't want anybody.
See? Yeah. Okay, so we have people that might be anxious that way because they're so upset and forlorn that they're in the situation that they're in. Perhaps for no fault of their own, people get laid off, people have medical issues, which is really the #1 reason why people have financial problems. There are medical issues that can go on. When you have new onset financial problems, oftentimes it's connected to a medical concern, which is horrible. That's compounding on top of whatever you're dealing with. So it's tough, but that's a great way, Joe, when you're saying, think about the person you love the most and how you would act to them. That's a great meter in your head.
Of course, because right, we never know, when somebody walks in, you never know what's behind that. Like you said, did that person just lose their job? Like we've had patients that came in and like maybe just lost a loved one. Or, so many layers, like you said before, go into why somebody's maybe feeling the way they are, or feeling the embarrassment, or like you said, feeling the way they do. So always remembering that, and because in that non-judgmental way, because we've all been guilty of that, right? No one could sit here and say they've never, so that's what kind of curbs that in a sense for me, to always remember that and be mindful. The word's like mindful of that. Like when somebody's sitting in front of you, you never know. It could have been their first time. It could be their first time walking and asking for help. Because like you said, they were doing okay. They were everything was okay. Maybe something in their life made them hit a point where they needed food, or they needed some assistance, or they needed something. So it was just got to be mindful of that. So the warm greeting always helps. Pleasant tone of voice, the way we project ourselves, not like yelling, not talking too soft, just in a very, I would say, respectful manner, like you would talk to people professionally. And someone talked about before with the hearing problems and language barriers. Those are challenging ones, right? So with the language barrier, if there could be a possibility to get some kind of interpreter service, because I think you could get them actually on the phone, like very easily too. There's a couple of programs that have that where you could connect with them, and it's right then and there. But I don't know. There's a bunch of them. I mean, I guess in each parish they can look into see how they can handle that when you do get somebody in with a language barrier. And obviously, if someone does have hearing problems, you could get the. That would be more sign language, right? I mean, I don't know if that would.
Well, they'll write it out.
They could write it down for you.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Engaging in active listening, right? There's a difference between listening and active listening, right? Like Dr. McKenna, I could be having a conversation, but like you said, if I'm staring at the clock or the fly in my car, I'm not really listening. Active listening has to do eye contact, right? Some head nods, let them know, reframing what they're saying back to them in a way, like so they know that you heard them. Say, oh, I heard you say, asking them open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are great because it gets people to talk. A closed-ended question is, just a yes or no. So if you want to get some information out of people and really want to dig and see what some of the problems are and the layers that we talked about, open-ended questions are the best.
Okay, so tell me more about that. help me understand about, you started to tell me about your situation, help me understand this, okay? As opposed to saying, so he's not working anymore? That's a
Right.
yes, no. Tell me more about this, gives them the opportunity to open up a bit. Now, sometimes people go to town on that. To back them up a little bit. But let's start out with the open-ended questions. Okay? Joe, maybe you can restate the content and the perceived feeling of what the person is saying. Why don't you give me an emotion-laden statement, and I'll give you an example of how I would try to reflect this. Don't be mean.
I'd just like to ask you a question?
Why don't you give me a statement as though you were a patient or a client
sure.
that's having a difficult
All right.
time,
I'll
and I'll
have-
see how I can reflect.
I'm having a difficult time since the pandemic hit. My wife lost her job. I'm only working minimally. We're having a really tough time financially right now, and I don't know what to do.
Okay, so you sound like you're somewhat overwhelmed. Your wife lost her job, the pandemic. There's so much stuff on you right now. You don't know what to do.
Correct.
Okay,
That's it.
That's it. So
What Dr. McKenna just did is, like that's active listening, and that's exactly right there.
you're kind of reframing. You can also say, now if he was like this, he didn't really have any emotion on his face because I put him on the spot. But if he came in and he was like this, I would say, God, you look so upset because you're dealing with the illness from the pandemic and you're dealing with the financial repercussions of this. You want to try to reflect the feeling and the emotion. And if he says, no, I don't feel upset, or no, I'm not frustrated, I'm mad, then you correct yourself. So if I said, you sound so frustrated because you're having trouble with the finances now and you have to come to outreach and you don't want to be beholden to anybody. No, I'm not frustrated with it, I'm just pissed off because the company is stupid. Okay, so you're not feeling frustrated yourself, you're more mad at the company. Yes, that's it. Go back and correct yourself. If they're saying, and even though you know they might look really frustrated. If they're saying, no, I'm angry, okay, we'll use angry, we'll use angry. Okay, so you're feeling really angry about that. Feeling and content. This is going to get you out of a lot of situations when you don't know how to deal with the person that's in the room with you, okay? So a lot of times we feel like we're givers, we're helpers, you're helping people, and you want to solve problems, okay? We like to be problem solvers. We're not going to be able to solve all these problems. When we're doing active listening, we're not problem solving at that point. We're trying to find out what the problem is and understand it better first. That's the empathy, understanding the problem and figuring that out with them. And then we'll go into problem solving mode, which is what they came to you for, okay? But a lot of us, even in our personal lives, we go right into problem solving mode. Oh, if I have to talk to your sister one more time, oh my God. Look, this is what you have to do. You tell her, stop talking right now, I'm talking. Because she'll just go on and on. See how I'm directing you exactly what to do? As opposed to saying, wow, you sound really frustrated with my sister, right? She's really good. And that's a different kind of a sense. It gives you time to, but the closer we are to people, the more likely we are to jump in with a solution. Think about your kids. I tend to call this the daddy problem, but it's definitely a mommy problem too, okay? You come in, they say, oh, I'm upset, I had a bad, or your grandchildren even. I had a bad day at school. This kid was mean to me. Look, the next time that kid comes up to you, you tell him this, and especially when it's someone you love. I remember me coming off the school bus once crying. It went around the cul-de-sac. My mother was out in the middle of the street and stopped the bus. It got on, started screaming. What happened the next day on the bus to me? It was bad. It was bad. You don't want your mother on the bus when you're in third grade yelling at the people on the bus that made you cry. Because then they're like, boo. I remember, I'm traumatized from when I was 9 years old. Boo, boo. It's terrible. So instead of saying, wow, Teresa, it was really tough. I don't expect, this is a level of kind of reflection that's hard for some people. Or it takes practice, and it absolutely takes practice. We were in graduate school learning this and practicing this, okay? But try it out. Try it out with your family. You sound upset, you sound angry, you sound frustrated, you're mad about it, and reflect back, and you can give it a little practice. Instead of saying, why don't you just tell me what you want? You can go that back and forth.
Or trying, like you said, to come up with a solution right away.
Yeah, you don't need to come up with a solution right away.
Right, and that's just a big key and because like I said, it lets that person know in front of you they're being heard. By, like, she validated, or even if, like she had said, if I was wrong, but she still validated that there was something there because she reframed what I said.
Right, and if he said that I was wrong, I was understanding it incorrectly, I would correct myself. That's part of what we do. When we're reflecting back to somebody, we'll correct ourselves if they're saying we're off kilter with what we're, it gives you that kind of way to make sure that you're on the right track with that. Okay?
Let me shift. So I'll let you take this one, Dr. McKenna, since you're taking this one up there.
Okay, so empathy is the act of understanding, being aware, sensitive, and experiencing vicariously. You're not experiencing the thoughts, the feelings of the person that you're talking to. So you're trying to understand. You want to avoid judging. Okay? Wow. That's what they said? Oh my God. You know, how did you do that? You know, no, you might avoid that. Okay? Resist telling people not to feel the way they're feeling. Okay? Don't be upset about that. He sounds like a jerk. Okay? Avoid that. Okay? Refrain from problem-solving mode when you're trying to actively listen, which is one of the things that I had said earlier when we were talking about this a little bit. Okay. What do you say? I knew you were a judgmental person from the first time I saw you. First time I looked at you. Okay? Don't do that. I knew you were a judgmental. Don't avoid that one. Okay? Now, we have that nonverbal communication Joe was talking about. Okay, we allow personal space between me and the client. They might feel threatened, especially if they're on something. Okay? Especially if they're having trouble with certain mental illnesses. They might not want you that close to them. Okay? You're going to be careful with this. Okay? Use a neutral stance. You're not like this, and you're not like, hey, how you doing? Not like this casual. You're trying to be neutral. You're just in your listening stance. Okay? Watch your facial expressions. Okay, this looks like I'm like, I can't even believe what's coming out of your mouth, as opposed to, which is a little different. It's a little bit more open and relaxed stance.
Facial expression would be a big one. How many times somebody said something, right? We react by our facial expressions, right? So,
yeah, you don't have to say a word to know how you're feeling. This is one of my favorites. See if it's one of your favorites too. I do this often when my husband's loading the dishwasher. Okay? Did I say anything? Do you know what I meant? Yes. Okay? He screwed up the dishwasher again, didn't he? It's okay, it's only been 23 years. All right. And sometimes he'll come behind me and go, okay, but now I've learned to kind of step back. You know, you have to pick your battles sometimes, right? You know. Okay. Check your body language. Avoid crossing your arms like this. Look at this guy. This guy over here. He's like, look at, taking down some of your intake information, but you're looking because you have a dinner reservation in 10 minutes. You know, you're not gonna. And you're using that calm tone of voice that we spoke about. Okay. Okay. Some other tips. Okay. Set reasonable limits. Offer only what you can deliver. Okay. Which I think you all know where the limits are and what your services can provide, but offer what you can deliver. This way they're not expecting more than that. Don't engage in escalating behavior. Avoid getting more defensive. Well, you know, you're the one that's raising your voice. Calm down. Don't do that. Don't do that, okay? Because when somebody tells you to calm down, how are you getting? I am calm. You're the one that's not calm. Okay? It's escalating. Okay? And avoid commenting about tangential topics. Okay, I'm here, I need food this week. Did your son get a job then? You know, if this is not germane to what's going on right now, you need to kind of avoid that. It might be going on in your head, and that might be something you want to talk about with a coworker, but you're holding back that judgment and you're holding back this topic when right now you're supposed to be helping this person either get their food or help them with the thrift shop or whatever it is. There might be another question going on, but unless that's your particular job right there, you're going to avoid that other topic. Because it's going to, again, help to rile people up. Okay? Don't be afraid of some silence. I've had times in therapy with a patient where I'm sitting there looking at them, and we're looking at each other. A minute feels like a long time. A long time. But sometimes, you don't have to fill in every minute with words. You can give them a chance to say something. And it might come up that the feelings are coming out, or there might be something else they want to say. So don't be afraid of the silence. But again, it's another thing that takes some practice, because we're not used to it. It feels uncomfortable.
Silence, right? And in a group especially. I know when I run groups, I've run groups plenty, and when you have all 10 clients sitting there not saying anything, you as the counselor wanna, but sometimes you have to embrace that silence, because after a while, somebody will open up and talk, so.
There was a scene in Good Will Hunting, you remember that movie?
Yeah,
And he was in with the therapist, and, he had a lot of, probably had a terrible childhood and all, but he was in with the therapist, played by Raoul Rose, and you see the clock going like this, and it was like, they were sitting like 20, 30 minutes, staring at, until finally, Matt Damon says something, but that's not easy as a therapist, but you don't have to sit 20 or 30 minutes, but, sometimes giving a minute to quiet is good.
Sometimes people have processing problems. It might take them longer to express what they want to say.
Excellent.
So we're maybe behaving at our level.
Yes.
Good
And
point.
we can transmit information quickly and react very quickly, but some people aren't able to do that.
What a great point. She's saying that some people might take longer to
That
process.
patience, that patience to allow them the ability
Yes.
to gather their thoughts, their emotions, and put it out.
Wonderful. So important to give them time to gather their emotions and thoughts. Thank you. Excellent.
well said, well said. So knowing the limits of how you can help, that's right, like what Dr. McKenna said, knowing our scope, what we can handle and what we can't handle. Like you said before, you'll meet people outside because if you know that they can't come in because of where they're at, so that's a good point of just knowing the limits of what we can provide, right? And what we can actually provide. And being aware of the extent of services that are available at the sites you're at, right? So it's just being mindful of that, when it's, even for myself, I know my job. I know sometimes when it's out of my scope, I may have to go to Dr. McCandle, I may have to go to administration, because I'm not going to try to be the hero and try to solve this for them if I know that I just don't have the answer. And sometimes we might not, and you might not, and that's where this next point, be ready to offer some other means of assistance, whether it's social services, housing resources, medical care resources, or counseling resources. Now, I don't know if you guys have that ready and available to you guys, but we can make that ready and available to you guys if need be at some point.
You have like some kind of thing to
Yeah.
refer to?
Yeah.
Or to call maybe a supervisor or a director to help you?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Because I will say online, Suffolk County has it, it's right on the internet, and it's a PDF. It just came out, and I just got it from the county. It's a community resource list from everything to, like you said, food pantries, shelters, programs, emergency services, contact numbers for after hours if somebody needs somewhere to stay, or safe shelter, domestic violence, all 24-hour hotline numbers that they can call. So I definitely know that whoever's in charge, like whoever does the community outreach here, it's right on the internet. You just look it up. The county has it. It's the 2023 Community Resource Guide, and it's definitely good and helpful for you guys because if it's something that is out of the limits, you might be able to steer them and say, hey, here's the number for this, or here's the number for that, So if a person is threatening to harm themselves, they definitely need professional evaluation. Has that ever happened to you guys where you've had anybody say they wanted to harm themselves? Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
you want to share?
Luckily, our pastor was here
Okay.
on site, and I was able to de-escalate the situation. He came and he counseled her.
Okay, good.
So we were fortunate that he was on site at the time.
Excellent, excellent. And is there kind of like a protocol of if he is not on site, like what you guys would do in that situation?
There's
Nice.
going to be soon.
No, it's okay. That's okay, because that can happen. Yes.
Is there a way of calming an autistic person down that gets aggravated over something?
That's a good question.
Okay, so some of the things that we're talking about with the tone of voice, the presentation is important. It's very important because the person, if they're on the autism spectrum, especially if it's severe, there are plenty of people walking around on the autism spectrum that you wouldn't even realize.
Right, I'm talking about severe.
They might seem quirky. You're talking about somebody severe. Would they be in there alone with you, asking for something, or would they, if they were severe, they would probably have somebody else with them, correct?
Yeah, but my understanding is sometimes when you ask them too many questions, it could set them off.
So that's where
So
your
you really don't
silence
have
comes
no
in.
knowledge of their background.
That's where your silence comes in. That's where you're kind of watching and metering their mood, watching their body language, seeing if they're tensing up, okay? Seeing if they're starting to huff and puff or look like they're getting more and increasingly nervous, and then to back off a little bit, back up a little bit. okay?
I've also found with autistic people that if you're sitting with them and they get that agitated, they sometimes need to just move.
Uh-huh.
So I will walk with someone.
Mhm.
And because I work with Mary Haven clients in our thrift shop, and one is autistic, and sometimes he just needs to move. So if he gets slightly agitated, the aide that's with him and I will just walk with him a bit, and sometimes he just needs to get out of the space.
Right.
And you give him a few seconds just to remove him from that situation, and then
Absolutely.
sometimes he
Right,
can get back
and when
on
you know
task.
that, now you know that client, and you can say, would you like to take a walk while we talk about this? And that might be helpful, instead of feeling kind of closed in. But watching, when you're dealing with someone that's having trouble regulating their emotions, you're keeping an eye on that, so you know what's kind of, ooh, that wasn't a good question, you could always back that off. Or that, they're not liking staying here, like you're saying. They're not like, or they're feeling trapped, or they're feeling, and you can say something, it looks like you're getting upset, is there something I can do to help? Tell me about what's going on with you now. I am getting upset, you're asking too many questions, you know, or I'm just feeling very nervous. Okay, what helps in that situation? Let me see what I can do to help you then. Okay, I feel better when I walk around. Okay, you want to go take a walk? We'll walk around. Or I just want a second to think about this. You know, I have to think for a minute. There's too much going on. Okay, why don't we sit here quietly for a minute, and when you're ready, then we'll start talking again. So you're kind of watching them, as opposed to saying something in particular. You're watching that interaction and seeing when you have to back off a little bit.
And obviously, the last point, if you are feeling unsafe, definitely call another person like you did that day with that individual. And if necessary, obviously call the police. And obviously, you know, and you may, you know, and you said you've gotten situations like that. If a person is a danger to themselves and cannot contract for their own safety, right? If you feel like somebody cannot contract for their own safety at that point, or they actually may tell you verbally that I really want to hurt myself and I have a plan and I want to go do this, you definitely would want to call 911.
This is why the professional evaluation is important, because for some of you, you might not understand what contract for safety means. And even when you're a professional, a person can contract for safety, say, I agree that I'm not going to hurt myself. And they'll say to me, Dr. McKenna, I agree that I'm not going to hurt myself. We can't leave it at that, though, because I've had patients say to me, I'm not going to tell you the truth because I know what you have to do if I do. They know exactly what I mean. So if they say, I'm not going to hurt myself, the eyes are rolling. What's keeping you going? Oh, I would never kill myself because God would be mad at me. Or I would never hurt myself because I have kids to worry about. You want that together, but that's what professionals will do. You don't have to be in that situation where you have to decide whether or not they're at a risk for suicide. That has to be sent off. They need to be sent to Mather. They need to be sent to Stony Brook, where we have some, you know, I'm not drumming up my own business. You can certainly send them to St. Charles, but they have a psychiatric triage area at Mather and at Stony. That's our closest.
Yes, they do.
At Mather and at Stony Brook. They have a non-emergency room triage area in Hauppauge, okay, as well. But that might be on your resources list.
Yes, and,
Okay?
and in that resource list too, there's also like when you get somebody in that type of distress but may not need to go to a hospital, there's agencies that have mobile crisis units. There's a program in DASH, the Family Service League in Hauppauge, that they will actually send a mobile crisis team come out to assess the situation. So if you guys are ever in that situation and you feel uncomfortable, but they're here and they're okay, but you're not sure, they will come out, like two social workers will come out from DASH, assess that person, and that's who would make the decision to say, all right, this person should go to Mather, or right, this person's really not a risk, they're okay, you know, they can go home. So that's why when you get that community resource list, having those mobile crisis units, sometimes that can come and pick someone up if you have somebody that's homeless, or, you know, help out in that when there's those gray areas that we spoke about. So the last thought we have is obviously, let me switch it, taking care of us. So like taking care of you, right? So we always, that's called self-care, right? We call it in our industry, right? Like self-care, because we work tirelessly, right? You guys do what you do, and we do work tirelessly. There, you can leave work some days, and so just being mindful of always taking care of yourself, not taking what the individual is saying personally, because it's not you, right? Remembering that there's something layered that's going on with them deep in that when you peel back that onion, which we may not be able to peel so much back, but there's something there that's causing them to feel the way that they do, and it's nothing you guys did. It's nothing I did, yes.
In the training at St. Charles that employees get, I learned something called Q-tip. You ever hear of Q-tip?
No, go ahead.
Quit taking it personal.
There you go.
You know, so don't take
Q-tip,
what they
right.
say or their emotions.
Right, good point. And just not, right, never taking it personally, because it's, you know, they're just acting on their emotions and feelings. And, you know, we have to remember that. Always try to seek out support from coworkers and supervisors that are here. Talk to someone. If you were engaged with someone that affected you, and it's going to. It happens to us all the time. You know, where you felt bad for a situation, or you felt really, you know, you took something personal, or did take something really hard that someone was going through that you spoke to. Talk to someone. Seek guidance, you know, and this is definitely the place to do it, right? At your parish, you know, so, and there's plenty of people that can offer that kind of support. And then obviously taking time for yourself to relax and enjoy the things that you guys like doing after a busy day. Or if you do get one of these tough crisis situations that affected you when you go home after you talk about it, you know, your hobbies and interests, you know, and sometimes we forget to put us there, you know, so that way we can continue to do the things that we do and play all the roles that we are, right? Like employees, parents, co-workers, husbands, wives, whatever roles we play in our lives, we can be the best version of that if we take care of ourselves and utilize that self-care. And I know sometimes I have to be mindful because we all get in those funks where we don't use that self-care. So I guess helpers often put their needs last. This can cause frustration and resentment and make people less helpful and more likely to burn out. And in our field, they call it counsel burnout or just burnout. And it does, because if we don't take care of it, we work in think about all the triage nurses that worked during COVID, right? All the, you know, you think about all the people, the first responders, and all the other people that worked through these last 3 years. 3 years. So yeah, I mean, and there was a lot of burnout. Unfortunately, there was. And so always remember, when you're feeling like, I always tell, my word is recharge the batteries. My word for me is always, I got to recharge my batteries sometimes. And I know when my battery is a little low, when I'm tired, when I had a hard week at work, I know when I need to kind of recharge that battery and do some of the things that make me feel good. You know, whether it's just spending time with my kids, spending time with my family, going for a walk, listening to music, whatever you guys like to do, just to get yourself in that good mind space, utilize it, and always remember that. And that just goes in our personal lives anyway, even outside of our work. So I thank you guys for being here tonight, and I guess do we have time for a couple of questions if anybody has? I don't know if we're in a rush. But anybody have any questions? Comments?
Thanks for the interaction. That helps us a little.
Yes.
We like to talk.